Hello, welcome to Rando Tech Info and my review of the TicWatch GTH from the perspective of a long-time Wear OS user. I've never really used the fitness tracker as a wearable, so when Mobvoi marketed this thing as a watch you could use as a fitness tracker, I was curious. Can this thing really be everything to everybody? Can this $80 wearable be a viable replacement for my Wear OS running $300 TicWatch Pro 3? You can get this watch right now for $79.99 off of Mobvoi's website, and I believe it's also available right now for the same price off of the Zon. Setup wasn't too difficult. You simply download the Mobvoi wearable app and then sync the watch to your phone. I go through all of this in my unboxing video, so feel free to go back and check that out. And while you're at it, feel free to sub to the channel.
Good idea.
Now, since I did my first trial run with this watch a little while back, Mobvoi released a firmware update, so I decided to try the watch out again more recently to see if they'd ironed out some of the bugs I noticed the first time around. This is one of the reasons it has taken me so long to post this review after the watch's release. As I go over the different features of the watch in this review, I will note where the firmware update made noticeable changes. So let's start with the good. The weight and fit of the watch is good, and it felt very good on my wrist. The 1.55-inch screen is fine. It has decent brightness and resolution, and while it has a bit of chunk in the bezel department, I don't really mind it. The screen also felt responsive to my touches. Now, not everything about the screen is sunshine and rainbows, but we'll touch more on that later. Battery life on this watch is very good. Mobvoi says this thing will get 7 to 10 days between charges, and I think that's actually a bit conservative. I wore this watch for a full week and still had half battery left, and that was with the screen brightness turned all the way up. But honestly, where this watch really stands out is with biometrics. It actually monitors a lot of stuff. The list includes your heart rate, oxygen levels, skin temperature, breathing, stress level, and sleep. And all these measurements can be tracked using the Mobvoi app. That is a lot of sensors and data for an $80 wearable, and it's truly where the GTH stands out. Heck, even my $300 TicWatch Pro 3 doesn't measure all this stuff. The watch also has some nice additional miscellaneous features. It has a Find My Phone button that makes your phone ring, although sadly it didn't always work even after the firmware update. It has a built-in timer and stopwatch. It has a nice built-in weather app that since the firmware update can now be changed to Fahrenheit. It's IP68 water resistant, and it has what I feel to be a decent variety of watch faces to choose from, although downloading them from the app to the watch is not exactly a fast process. Now let's talk about what this watch is missing. Now remember, I'm coming from an over 3 times more expensive full-fledged Wear OS smartwatch, so when I mention some of these things, some of you are going to say, well, duh. But I do think they need to be mentioned, especially if you're moving to this from a smartwatch as opposed to a fitness tracker. Earlier, I said we would come back around to the screen later. It's now later. There's no always-on display, and the longest you can set the screen to stay on at a time is 15 seconds. As someone who's coming over from a watch that has an always-on display, this was very jarring. In addition, the watch did not always come on when I turned over my wrist to look at it. Sometimes I had to repeat the motion. There are no speakers or microphone on this watch, which means you can't take or make phone calls. You also can't listen to or dictate text messages. All you can do is read them. There's no way to respond to them. In fact, the only notifications the watch seems to be capable of receiving are health notifications and texts, but the texts were very hit or miss, and I'll talk more about that later. There's no app store for the watch, so no downloading additional apps, and there's no GPS tracking or Google Assistant. Now, a lot of this can be excused considering what the watch is and its price point. What is harder to excuse is the other issues that this watch has. On average, only about half of the texts I received on my phone actually came through on the watch, and that was after the firmware update. The Mobvoi app has a setting to turn the time on the watch from 12-hour to 24-hour mode, but no matter what mode I put it in, the watch still always displayed in 24-hour mode, and once again, this was also after the firmware update. Now, because you can't download any apps to the watch, you are stuck with the apps that come pre-loaded. This includes the Mobvoi Tic Health app. This would be okay, except there are only 14 different activities included in the app. For example, there's no strength training option in the app, so when I exercised, I had to choose gymnastics because it is what I thought was the closest thing to what I was doing. Seriously, unless you happen to be doing one of the 14 pre-loaded exercises that come on the app, the activity tracking is actually not that useful, and that is a big deal for a wearable that Mobvoi calls a health expert for your wrist. The watch is IP68 water resistant, but water seems to wreak havoc with the display, at least in the shower, and the charging cord might be the shortest and cheapest I have ever seen packaged in a product. So at the end of the day, it's hard for me to give the GTH a strong recommendation. There are simply too many issues with the device, with the issues of missed notifications and the lack of activity options being the biggest deal breakers for me. But look, if you have $8 to spend and all you want from a watch is the time in 24-hour format, some extensive biomonitoring, and the exercises you happen to do are included in the app, then this watch might be for you. Well, that's all the useful information I have today about the TicWatch GTH. If you wind up picking up this smartwatch, and particularly if you're someone who winds up picking up this watch coming over from another fitness tracker, please put down in the comments what fitness tracker you're moving from and what you think of this device to give people another perspective and help others decide if this is a purchase worth making. As always, I hope you found the video useful. Thanks for watching. And until next time, this is Rando Tech Info signing out.